Good morning, everyone. Today, I would like to talk about something that sounds simple, but is actually very difficult to define. Happiness. We all say we want to be happy, but what do we really mean when we use that word? For some people, happiness means pleasure. Eating good food, laughing with friends, playing games, or listening to music you love. These are moments when we feel joy, and they matter. But can happiness only mean pleasure? If so, what happens when the moment ends? Others say happiness means purpose. Imagine studying hard for an exam, training for a sport, or helping someone in need. It may not feel good at every moment. Sometimes it is tiring, even painful. But in the end, it brings a deeper sense of satisfaction. This kind of happiness is not about one moment. It is about building a life that feels meaningful. Philosophers have argued about this for centuries. Aristotle said that happiness is living with virtue, becoming the best version of ourselves. The utilitarians said happiness is pleasure and the absence of pain. Religions also give answers. Buddhism speaks of freedom from desire. Christianity emphasizes love, and Confucianism highlights harmony in relationships. Each tradition gives us a different track, but all are part of the same song. Now, let's think about our daily lives. On social media, we see images of perfect happiness, vacations, fancy food, smiling faces. But is that real happiness? Or is it performance? Sometimes scrolling makes us feel less happy, not more. So maybe happiness is not about comparison, but about gratitude. Appreciating the ordinary joys in our own lives. Happiness also depends on connection. People with strong relationships, if family, friends, and community tend to be happier. Loneliness, on the other hand, makes life heavy. That means happiness is not only an individual project. It is something we create together. As high school students, what does this mean for us? I think happiness is not just about the next exam score, the next purchase, or the next like on our posts. Happiness is about finding meaning in effort, sharing time with people we care about, and trusting that even struggles can shape us. So here is my conclusion. Happiness is not one simple thing. It is not only pleasure, not only success, not only peace. It is a balance. Joy and effort, freedom and connection, comfort and challenge. It grows when we pay attention, when we share, and when we live with purpose. I believe our generation's task is not to chase happiness as if it were a prize, but to create it as a way of life. To be grateful for what we have, to connect with others, and to use our freedom with responsibility. That is what happiness means to me.
All right, listeners. Today, we're tuning into a track that everyone wants to hear, but no one can fully pin down. We're talking about happiness, what it is, why we chase it, and how the beat of our lives shapes it. Not just smiles and photos, not just the buzz of likes on a post, but the deeper rhythm underneath. By the end of this set, I want you to feel the groove that makes happiness more than a word. First drop. What is happiness, really? Some say it's pleasure, the rush you get when your team wins, when you eat your favorite food, when the sun hits your face. That's the hedonist beat. Quick, powerful, but it fades fast. Others say happiness is purpose, working toward a goal, building something bigger than yourself, giving your time to people you love. That's the Aristotelian track. Slower, steadier, designed to last. Different rhythms, same word. Now, let's rewind through history. In ancient Greece, Aristotle talked about eudaimonia, living in accordance with virtue, becoming the best version of yourself. For him, happiness wasn't just about how you feel in the moment. It was about the harmony of a whole life. Fast forward to 18th century England, and we get Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, utilitarian thinkers who said happiness is about maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain for the greatest number of people. And today, we scroll through feeds where happiness looks like curated perfection, vacations, gadgets, selfies with filters. But is that real happiness, or just a remix of envy and performance? Let's talk money. Studies show that wealth increases happiness, but only up to a point. Once basic needs are covered, the curve flattens. More zeros in the bank don't always mean more beats in your heart. Same with fame. The spotlight shines, but it also burns. Happiness can't be purchased like a download. It has to be composed through values, relationships, and meaning. What about science? Psychologists talk about hedonic well-being, pleasure and comfort, versus eudaimonic well-being, purpose and growth. Neuroscientists study dopamine and serotonin, trying to map happiness to chemicals in the brain. But ask anyone, and you'll find happiness isn't only inside your skull. It's also in community, culture, and context. A laugh with friends can outplay any lab result. Here's a drop worth noting. Technology. Our devices promise connection, but often deliver comparison. We measure happiness by notifications, and if the likes don't come, the silence feels like failure. But maybe real happiness is when we put the phone down and look someone in the eye. The beat changes when presence replaces performance. And let's not forget struggle. Some of the deepest happiness comes not from comfort, but from overcoming hardship. Climbing a mountain hurts, but the view resets your soul. Studying for months and finally passing that exam. It's not pleasure, it's achievement. Maybe happiness isn't always about feeling good. Sometimes it's about being good. So how do we live this out? Try this set list. Gratitude. Notice the small beats of joy in ordinary days. Connection. Share the track with others, because music is better when it's not solo. Purpose. Find goals that stretch you, not just please you. Balance. Bond. Crank the volume of one track so high you miss the others. Happiness, then, is not a single note. It's a mix. Pleasure plus purpose. Joy plus justice. Comfort plus challenge. It's not static. It's dynamic. A playlist that evolves as you grow. And just like any good DJ knows, the flow matters more than any single drop. As we slide into the outro, here's the takeaway. Happiness is not something you chase, like the next hit single. It's something you compose, day by day, choice by choice. It's not about always feeling good, but about building a life that feels true. The rhythm of happiness isn't track just in the highs, it's also in the transitions. The pauses, the echoes. So protect your joy, remix your struggles, and drop gratitude into the beat of your daily life. Happiness is not the noise outside. It's the melody you create within. Stay tuned, stay present, and let your happiness track play.
When we gather to ask, what is happiness? We are not asking a question that is merely private, like, what flavor of ice cream do you prefer? We are asking a question that strikes at the very center of how human beings should live. Happiness is not simply a matter of subjective taste, nor can it be reduced to fleeting moments of pleasure. It has been and continues to be one of the central questions of philosophy, politics, and morality. So let us begin. What do we mean when we say that a person is happy? Do we mean that they are smiling, laughing, and free of pain in this particular moment? Or do we mean that they are living a life that, when taken as a whole, is fulfilling and good? The ancients, particularly Aristotle, gave us one answer. For him, happiness was not simply a mood or a state of mind. It was eudaimonia, human flourishing, the realization of our unique capacities as rational and moral beings. Happiness, then, was not pleasure, but excellence. It was not something you could measure by counting smiles. It was measured by whether one lived a life of virtue, guided by reason, committed to justice, and in harmony with others. But this Aristotelian idea is very different from the modern utilitarian view. In the 18th and 19th centuries, philosophers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill argued that happiness is best understood as pleasure and the absence of pain. To govern well, they said, is to maximize happiness, the greatest good for the greatest number. That definition has had enormous influence. Even today, governments measure cross-national happiness, or more commonly, GDP, as if numbers on a spreadsheet could capture the human spirit. So here is our first question. Is happiness simply the sum of pleasures minus pains, or is it something deeper, connected to virtue, purpose, and meaning? Consider this thought experiment. Suppose there were a machine that could simulate perfect pleasure. You plug yourself into the quote, experience machine, and from then on, you feel endless joy, satisfaction, excitement, all the good feelings. without any of the pain. Would you choose to enter? Many of us would hesitate. Why? Because happiness is not only about how it feels from the inside. It is about being in touch with reality, about living authentically. A simulated joy, however pleasant, seems hollow if it is disconnected from truth. The thought experiment reveals something crucial. Happiness must involve more than sensation. It must involve truth, integrity, and engagement with the real world. But the debate does not end there. Let us turn to religion and culture. In Buddhism, happiness is linked not to accumulation, but to detachment, freedom from craving and clinging. In Christian traditions, happiness is bound up with love, love of God, love of neighbor. In Confucian philosophy, happiness is harmony in relationships, the fulfillment of duty, the balance of personal cultivation and social order. So whose definition is correct? Or must we admit that happiness is culturally relative, that it depends on time and place? If so, can we ever build a common political project around it? Now, let us bring the discussion closer to home. In modern consumer culture, happiness is often equated with success, wealth, and recognition. Advertisements whisper that the new phone, the new car, the new vacation will bring us joy. Social media amplifies the same message, curating images of perfect lives designed to spark envy. Yet surveys show that beyond a modest level of income, additional wealth does not increase happiness. What it does increase, often, is anxiety and comparison. So we face another question. If material goods and recognition do not guarantee happiness, what does? Perhaps we should consider the role of relationships. Studies consistently show that people with close bonds with family, friends, communities report higher levels of happiness. Loneliness, by contrast, correlates strongly with despair and even with shorter life expectancy. So is happiness less about what we achieve individually and more about what we share collectively? And yet, here lies a tension. Modern liberal societies place heavy emphasis on individual choice. Each person should define happiness for themselves. But if happiness is bound up with community, with shared values, then perhaps it cannot be purely individual. Perhaps it requires common practices, common virtues, even common sacrifices. Let us test this with a concrete case. Imagine a society that prizes economic growth above all. People work long hours, sacrifice family time, and exhaust themselves in the pursuit of higher GDP. They have more goods, but less rest, less presence with loved ones, less community. Are they happier? Or consider the reverse. A society where people value leisure, community, and balance, but where economic growth slows. Are they happier? Which society would you rather live in? The answer is not obvious. It forces us to confront what we mean by happiness. If happiness is pleasure, perhaps the first society wins. If happiness is virtue and community, perhaps the second. Another case, social media. Platforms promise connection but often deliver comparison. They tell us that happiness is, quote, Instagram, engagement. But do these metrics measure real joy? Or do they trap us in a cycle of constant validation? If happiness is defined by others' approval, is it really happiness or is it dependence? What about hardship? Many people report that the most meaningful moments of their lives came not from ease, but from struggle. Overcoming illness, raising children, fighting for justice. These are not always pleasurable, but they are deeply fulfilling. So perhaps happiness is not always about feeling good. Sometimes it's about doing good. Here then is the challenge. Can we define happiness in a way that honors both the inner experience of joy and the outer reality of virtue, justice, and truth? Aristotle would say yes. Happiness is living in accordance with virtue. Utilitarians would push back. Happiness is maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. Buddhists would add, happiness is detachment from craving. Psychologists might say, happiness is positive emotion plus engagement, meaning, accomplishment, and relationships. Each account illuminates something real, yet none captures the whole. So perhaps happiness resists a single definition. Perhaps it is a cluster concept, a constellation of pleasure, purpose, connection, and meaning. But that does not mean the debate is useless. On the contrary, debating happiness forces us to ask what kind of life and what kind of society we should build. If we say happiness is pleasure, we build societies of consumption. If we say happiness is virtue, we build societies of character. If we say happiness is connection, we build societies of community. Each path has costs, each requires choices, and those choices are not merely personal, they are political. Should governments aim to maximize GDP or to promote well-being? Should schools teach only skills for work or also virtues for life? Should technology connect us more or disconnect us from ourselves? So as we reflect on happiness, let us not treat it as a private matter only. Happiness is a public question. It asks us to deliberate together, to weigh pleasures against virtues, individual goals against collective goods, fleeting moments against lasting meaning. And perhaps, in the very act of debating happiness, we practice a form of happiness itself. The happiness of living as thoughtful, responsible citizens, seeking not only our own joy, but also the common good.